It is time. We have been waiting and waiting and waiting for baseball to be here. It's time to prepare for your draft. It is MFSN's draft preparation show. We're going to be looking at hitters today, and I'm here as always with Casey, Vlad to the Bone Scheinvold, and Ross the Boss.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ross the Boss, and I want to talk Major League Baseball hitters with you, cowboy. I'm so excited. I can smell the fresh grass outside because it's baseball season. This is going to be unbelievable. 162 games. We're going to have a great time. Season starts in April. It's going to be the best.
Now, Ross can smell grass outside while he's inside his house because one of the walls has crumbled. It's just what happens sometimes. It happens to people. Let's dive right in, guys. Okay, we're going to do catchers, first base, second base, shortstop, third base, and we're going to do outfielders. And each one of us is going to take you through our top 10. Then we're going to go through busts, sleepers, and value picks. We'll even define what those are for you. We want you to have the best draft you can. We're going to dive right in. Ross, you have the top 10 catchers. Go for it.
A little preamble before we get started. This season, I have some qualifications. When I draft people, I want 20 home runs out of my players, and I'm trying to do this season. I don't know if I can do it. 10 stolen bases. I'm going to try to do that on every player I draft this year. Catchers is going to be tough. But other positions, I think I can do it. We'll see what happens. But I'm just giving you some qualifications, what Ross the Boss is doing. Another thing you got to worry about with catchers, they're going to be playing the DH spot. On the days when they're not playing catcher, they're playing DH. So you're going to get a lot more use out of your catchers this year. Usually they just play about 60 to 70%. They're going to play like 90 to 100% of games now. So that all being said, the catching position, people blow it off. I'm not blowing anything off. So my first pick, my number one guy, he plays for the Kansas City Royals, Salvador Perez. Come on down here and get your trophy. You're my number one pick. Over 40 home runs, over 100 RBIs. No one else can do that as catcher this year. There's no one else even close to him in home runs. Flat to the bone, Casey Scheinfold. So I love Salvador Perez. He's my number one. Number two, it's close. There's a lot of separation after the first three. I feel JT Realmuto, is that how you say it?
Realmuto. I knew that was going to give you trouble.
I know.
I almost felt bad assigning catcher to you just because of
I
that.
love catchers. JT, I feel he's my number two catcher, over 20 home runs. He's not really a base stealer. It doesn't matter. I think he'll hit for average too. He won't hurt you in that category either. JT's my number two catcher. My number three, he's the Fresh Prince. It's Will Smith. It's not the pitcher. It's not the guy on TV. He's the catcher for the LA Dodgers. Will Smith, another guy. Anytime the Dodgers need a big hit, Will Smith's the guy. Hits for average. He'll have over 20 home runs. He can't go wrong. He's a top three. I have him in the top three. I know it's kind of scary, but that's number three. Number four is kind of like an investment in the future. He's going to have a huge breakout year this year. If you're in your dynasty league and he's not taken, I'm sure he is, but if he's not, Adley Rutschman. Did I say it right? Rutschman. Adley Rutschman. Baltimore Orioles. He's going to be a big star. Next year, he'll be your number one pick when it comes to catchers. I guarantee that right now, and I'm Ross the Boss. So you can wait and take him later in the draft. You can take him earlier so you know you have a great player for throughout the year. This guy's a complete stud. My number two is Dalton Varshall of the Arizona Diamondbacks. He showed a lot of promise last year. He's a lot more comfortable this year. He'll have over 20 home runs. He'll bat for average. And the Diamondbacks, I feel they're going to have a better team than last year. This guy will be batting fifth or sixth in the lineup. He's a must take in the top five if you're looking for a catcher. My next guy is Tyler Stevenson. Barnhart is gone. He's gone out of Cincinnati. They traded him to the Tigers, so they only have one catcher left. Who is it? It's Stevenson. This guy's going to hit for average. He's going to play every day. If he's not playing, he'll be DHing. He's a total stud. I like Stevenson a lot. My number 7 guy is Mitch Garver, Minnesota Twin. Yasmin Grudal of the White Sox. He can hit.
Yasmani Grandal.
Yasmani Grandal.
Can help you out. Yep.
Wilson Contreras of the Cubs is 9. And 10, I did this for Casey. Gary Sanchez, I feel his batting average is going to hurt you. He's going to bat like 200, but he'll have like 25, 30 home runs, especially with that DH spot. He'll be DHing a lot for the Yankees too, I believe. and he'll play catcher a lot too. But Gary Sanchez, I know he's old, but I feel he's going to have a pretty good year this year with the Yankees, and that's my top 10. There you go.
Okay, now I just want to respond quickly, just in relation to catchers in general. Ross, I really think you nailed it, because it's usually the case that there's a top tier and then there's a huge cliff.
Totally.
And that's what happened here. So if you're gonna get a really top tier catcher, you gotta draft him early. If you're not gonna do that, then find a value pick or a sleeper to get later.
Or just wait. Yeah, wait. I mean, Adley, as I said, for the Baltimore, Adley is going to be a stud, and you'll see that he'll break out this year. He'll be the talk of the league. He'll be an all-star probably this year also. He'll be like reserve, but there's a lot of value out there with some guys that I mentioned, and you got to draft these guys quick to get them because they'll very quickly in the draft compared to other positions.
But I would argue that picks 4 through 10 could be shuffled in any way with our sleepers, with our value picks, and probably even with our busts. So let's get into that. I'm an optimist, so I want to start with sleepers. Casey, you have the catching sleepers. Who do you got? Wait, let's define it. Hold on, let's define it for everybody. To me, and listen, maybe we're not even speaking the same language. For me, there's a difference between sleepers and value picks. Sleepers are the players who have never really broken out in my mind, but we think are now going to. Whereas value picks, they've been good before, but they're being undervalued. That's how I define it. Casey, do you have it different?
I see sleepers as ones who might be drafted outside of the top 10 to 15 catchers or whatever position is, who have as good of a chance to finish inside the top 10 as they do where they currently are. That's kind of what I think of as a sleeper, somebody who has the potential to break out and climb into the ranks, even though they weren't ranked there ahead of the season.
All right, I like that definition. Go ahead and tell us who your sleepers are.
Well, I'm just going to name two. One is Christian Vazquez of the Boston Red Sox. He has put up numbers before. He struggled a little bit last season, but it's a potent lineup. He's a high contact guy who hits for a decent average. He's got some pop. He's not going to give you more than probably 10 to 15 home runs, but he's solid. He's in a high run producing offense, so he'll have opportunities for RBIs and runs scored. You're not really going to get a lot of high average or stolen base guys in the catcher position, so you're looking at 2 to 3 category players, and he's one who can fit there. The second one I have is Keibert Ruiz of the Washington Nationals. He was the centerpiece of what the Nationals got back from the Dodgers and giving them both Trey Turner and Max Scherzer last year. And this is a guy who is a top prospect who last year struck out in only, I think it was 9.4% of his at-bats, which is, it would have been second among all qualifiers in the league, not just at catcher in strikeout percentage, how low it was. So it's a guy who gets the bat on the ball. He doesn't strike out much. And in a league, in Major League Baseball is kind of a what do they call it, a 3-outcome strikeout, walk, or home run. This is a guy who doesn't strike out that much. So if he's getting the ball in play, he's going to be an average guy, and so he can also help you in the average department. So that's somebody who I think, if his contact skills maintain, which they did all through the minors, can really be a breakout and a high-value player.
Well, I like a lot of what you're saying, and with a guy like Christian Vazquez, one of the reasons I like him is that his batting average just isn't going to be that low. A catcher that doesn't hurt you massively in batting average is extremely valuable because you're going to get other guys that will. So I'm going to go to value picks now. This is a guy I actually see as kind of a sleeper because he's never really done that well. But Omar Narvaez, this guy, he has great plate discipline. You don't find that in catchers a lot. He's a guy that I could see you snagging very easily. I could see him as the number 4 catcher potentially. I'm not saying it will be that, but it easily could happen. Another guy that I like is Carson Kelly. This is kind of a post-hype breakout. He showed some good signs of it, and he was a high prospect. There's no reason that he can't perform. So to me, when I'm looking at this list, I don't see a whole lot of difference between these two guys I just mentioned, the two guys you mentioned as sleepers, or even 4 through 10 that Ross mentioned. Catcher's a very tricky position that way. Now I'm going to get into busts. This is also for Casey.
Here we go.
My top bust is Gary Sanchez. Gary Sanchez, he could end up batting 160. You cannot even play him.
160.
160 might be generous.
It's true. And listen, when it comes to catcher, the number one thing is you do not want to damage your team with a catcher. You don't want to feel that I might as well have played no one. And that's what could happen with Gary Sanchez. Another guy that I think is going to be a bust that some people might think is being undervalued is Eric Hassey the Detroit Tigers. He's just kind of a journeyman. I don't see him doing as well as he did last season. It was a big outlier. Guys get on hot streaks.
But Tucker Barnhart's going to be their everyday catcher. He's the Golden Glove at catcher.
Well, there's the other reason that.
They paid him a lot of money and
yes.
traded for him. So I think Tucker has that job.
So 2 points. 2 points. One that Ross making, one that I'm making. Pay attention to the shifts that have happened in the offseason. You need to know if that player whose stats look good are even going to be there. Are they even going to be playing that much? In this case, no. I also think that even if Barnhart got hurt, Hasse wouldn't be high on my list anyway. Let's move on to first base. Casey, you have the top 10 list.
Well, I am obviously, I was very excited when you gave me first base because, as you know, my team name and what you guys always refer to me as Vlad to the Bone because I might be the biggest Vladimir Guerrero Jr. fan, certainly of the group here, but one of the bigger ones there is. I've owned him since his days in the minors in our keeper league, and he is, to me, far and away the number one first baseman. He's 4 categories, obviously: average, power, RBIs, and runs scored. He's not going to steal bases. You don't need somebody who's going to hit in the 340s with over 40 home runs, 100 runs scored, 100 plus RBIs to run for you. He just does it all, everything else so well that he's an anchor for any team. Number 2, he is the closest thing you can get, and he's been as reliable as can be for at least 10 of his 12 years in Atlanta, and that's Freddie Freeman. My only fear with Freddie Freeman is if he does move to a new team, does that change his performance some? Certainly if he switches leagues, and you'll find me mentioning this later when it comes to busts. I worry about players who switch leagues, and since he's still a free agent at the time of this showing, at the time of this taping, I'm not sure where he's going to be. If he stays in Atlanta, clear-cut number 2. Even if he stays in the National League, I'll be comfortable with him. But if he goes to the American League, there is always a little bit of regression in the wrong direction there for players who switch. Number 3 was Dan. I think you and I have to own this. Our biggest swing and the miss, and Ross can take all the credit for it, is Matt Olson. Ross ranked him last year, I think, in the top 5 or 6. Dan and I was kind of like threw a flag and said it wasn't true, and he delivered. He hit for average, he hit for power, he drove in runs, he scored runs. Definitely a good player. Number 4 and 5 are kind of the old reliables, and number 7, but we'll get there. But number 4 is Paul Goldschmidt. He's done it for years in Arizona. He did it last year again in St. Louis. He can even chip in some steals for you in addition to hitting for the average and the power. Definitely a top 5 first baseman. Jose Abreu is an RBI machine. I know the new wave metrics don't look at RBIs as being impactful, but in fantasy baseball, when you're playing in RBIs a category, the ability to get runners in from when they're on base is great. And Jose Abreu can hit for average, power, and drive in runs. Number 6, he's not going to help you in average. His power is prodigious. It's a question of whether he does it. I think the Mets are going to be a really good team this year. I think he's going to be in the center of what is a much improved lineup. And Pete Alonso is just, he's a top 6 or 7 first baseman for me. Number 7 is Joey Votto. 2 years ago, if you had asked me, I don't even think he was in my top 20. Last year, he decided, what did we said Votto was banging. I think we said that every year every week last year.
The whole Cincinnati says that now.
He decided to be more aggressive, and when there was a pitch in the zone, he punished it. If he can keep that up, he took a lot of teams he took a lot of fantasy teams far in the playoffs because they took a flyer on him in the later rounds last year. CJ Cron, that's most fantasy people agree with us, but we believe in people who have power and who hit in Colorado. CJ Cron has the first base job in Colorado. Therefore, he's going to be a fantasy asset, I think, in a lot of ways. Number 9 and 10, I think there's a drop-off here pretty significantly, but I like Ryan Mountcastle in Baltimore. He's a power and average guy. He can chip in the runs a little bit. He qualifies at outfield also, so he gives you some multi-position eligibility. He's a young player who is a high prospect, started to deliver last year. If he builds on it this year, he's going to be even better. And then number 10 is Rhys Hoskins. I think Rhys Hoskins is going to really benefit from the universal DH because defensively he is not very strong, and I think that can affect his offense. He's got great plate discipline and prodigious power. I think you can expect some pretty good things from him in that Philadelphia lineup this year.
Okay, I got to give my compliments again to the MFSN staff because, Casey, I think you hit on the idea of when that tier drop-off is. The only distinction I would make is I think there's more risk with CJ Cron, and so I would put him as where the tiers break right after Votto and to Cron. Otherwise, I think you nailed it. I'm going to start with sleepers because I'm an optimist, as I said. So these are two guys who had really, really good second halves, and they're pretty decent prospects. Some of them, one of them is pretty high prospect. So first one does qualify at outfield, so at least in Yahoo. That's how we're kind of taking our cues here. Lourdes Gurriel, I think you have him mentioned in the outfield. That's okay.
As
we'll
a
mention him
sleeper.
twice. That's okay.
I think I mentioned him as a sleeper.
I have him as a sleeper at first base. So I could see potentially taking him over somebody like C.J. Cron. Rhys Hoskins, I think, has higher upside, and so does Ryan Mountcastle. But Lourdes Gurriel is not far behind. Another guy that I really like is the Red Sox, Bobby Dalbec. This guy was a pretty good prospect, still, and when we say was, he didn't change who he is. But he actually has shown signs of growth. If you go to your stats and you go to split stats and you look at post-All-Star versus pre-All-Star break, you can see a lot of guys were figuring it out. This guy is one of those. These are guys to scoop up in your draft. If you get some of these guys, let's say you draft Matt Olson and get Bobby Dalbec, and Bobby Dalbec is absolutely raking, that means you can trade Matt Olson. This is part of what you need to do. Find value later in the draft. These are the sleepers that I have. Ross, bring us to value picks. As we know, they're similar, but I think value picks are usually ones that are pretty established names, but they're still being undervalued.
Yeah, I had Joey Votto as a value pick because I know a lot of people don't appreciate him. He's in the last year of his contract with the Cincinnati Reds, that $200 million contract. This is the last year of it. So I don't know how long he wants to play for. I know he wants to try to get 3,000 hits, which means he has to play at least another 2 or 3 years. But that all being said, Votto will be available in 8th, 9th, 10th round. Pick him up. He's going to have another great year. Joey loves the bang. That's what they say in Cincinnati. Another great value pick. He plays right here in Los Angeles, where I live. He plays for the Angels. Jared Walsh, the old Irishman, Jared Walsh. He a lot of hype last year. He had an average year. He had like 20-something home runs and hit 260, 270. I feel this year he's going to hit about 290 and have about 30 home runs. This guy is really good, and I think the Angels they're going to be healthy this year with Trout coming back. His numbers will improve, and you'll see a big jump with him, especially in RBIs with Trout in the lineup this year. So those are my two value picks from first.
All right, I like it. Now, Casey, take us through. Oh no, it's Ross. You were assigned the busts on this, so I'm actually sticking with you. Tell us who to avoid.
Josh Bell. He had that one good first half for the Pirates. I don't know if you guys remember this. He had a great first half when he played for the Pirates, and then he kind of fizzled at the second half of the season. And then now he plays for the Nationals. He gets all this hype, and I never seen him come through with anything. And Anthony Rizzo, he got older. You can see it in his swing. He struck out a lot last year for the Yankees. Is he a free agent? I think he's a free agent, actually. I don't know where he's playing next.
He hasn't signed yet.
But I feel that his days are over playing Major League Baseball. If he signs, it's going to be for low money, and he's going to have to make the ball club. So we'll see what happens with him. But don't draft him.
Especially not if he doesn't even make the club. Great picks to avoid. The MFSN staff's giving you what you need.
Yep.
Up next, we are moving to second base. And I'm going to hog the floor at first because I got assigned second base. I can't remember if I assigned it to myself or not. But anyways, here are my top 10 at second base. Now remember, if they have multiple position eligibility, here's what I did, guys. I picked the player that I would want to pick for that particular position. So these guys may have multiple position eligibility, but I would play them at this spot if they do.
Well, let me say something real quick about multiple positions real quick for everybody so don't forget. It's so imperative that you take players that can play different positions, because if somebody gets hurt, it doesn't mean that you're stuck picking up a second baseman. If he plays shortstop or outfield and second base, that can do wonders on your fantasy team. So when you draft, and if there's a player between two guys and they're eligible for more positions, the other guy, take the guy that it's multiple positions. It's so important during the season. Trust me, it works. Keep going.
It's a great point, and it's very important because different positions are going to have different depth.
There you go.
So if you have a player like Chris Taylor, who I haven't ranked at 8th in this list, he has multiple position eligibility. You can slot him in anywhere. You can go and get the position that is less thin off the waiver wire. So
now you're thinking like Ross the Boss. Keep going. I love it.
All right, number 1, top pick at second base for me. Really, I wouldn't say far and away. For me, it's top 2, but he is top 1 clearly for me, is Ozzy Albies. This guy can do everything. He's a power speed guy. He hits for decent average. He's just getting started. He's a young player. This guy has monster upside. Of everyone in this position, he's the one who clearly is the absolute difference maker. However, Whit Merrifield is also a great second baseman because he steals so many bases and he does a lot of other stuff. Whit Merrifield probably has the best floor of anybody other than Ozzy Albies. Ozzy Albies has a great floor and a great ceiling. Whit Merrifield, though, his floor is great. He's not going to hurt you. He's going to be great. These are the top 2. The next guy has more question marks, but he put up monster numbers last year. It's Marcus Semien. Now, some people might have had him at shortstop. I understand that. For me, I felt shortstop was a little bit stronger, so I slotted him in at second base. That's where I'd want to draft him. He put up monster numbers. How much do we trust it? He's done it now, not just for the one season. He was a monster the second half of the season before that as well, as I recall, although it was shortened. So what's the second half? But in any case, he even was hitting well in 2019. He's been doing it for long enough that I trust him. I have him at number 3. Number 4, Casey might very much disagree with me on this because you're a ballpark guy, Casey. And Javier Baez has switched to Comerica in Detroit. Well, here's the thing.
Go ahead. He's on my busts for a reason, but go ahead.
I know. Okay, but for me, the guy can still do it all, and he's still relatively young. There are so many times where people underestimate the situation. They just think, oh, well, he's hitting in a pitcher's park. Look at what happens with the San Diego Padres. Everybody was, saying, oh, Tatis is great, but he's going to be limited in that park. He's not. If you're good enough, you're not going to be that limited. I don't think Javier Baez is Tatis. Don't get me wrong. But I still think he has the upside to be there above the rest of these guys I'm going to mention. Jose Altuve, meanwhile, is very unappreciated in drafts. He's older. He had a bad year, 1 year. But last year, he really rebounded. I think he's in for a good, solid year. Is he going to be a complete difference maker on your team? No, because he doesn't steal that much anymore. If he starts stealing again, he could be an absolute monster. But we know that doesn't happen usually. When they stop stealing, they usually stop stealing. Up next is a youngster that I really like, Jonathan India. You'll like that, Ross, as a Reds fan. Jonathan India can do it all, and I really like investing in a player who showed great signs of life, was a high prospect, and obviously is young. So he's unproven. His upside is really, really big.
Hey, Rookie of the Year!
Yeah. Now, Cattell Marte, I like this guy as a rebound candidate. He's got a lot of risk to him. Is he going to end up in the top 10? He easily might not, but he also could end up being huge. So he's a risk-reward pick. Chris Taylor's up next. I love him because of his position eligibility. He's not going to be a difference maker at all, but he's also really not going to hurt you, and he's got the position eligibility, so I like him. Then, to me, there was a big drop-off. These next guys I like, but I had to slot somebody in, and I had to slot him in for a reason. Jess Chisholm, I like him because he steals a lot of bases. He's young. He's got a lot of upside. Another guy I like is Brendan Rodgers. I like him, first of all, because he plays in Colorado, but he also was a high prospect, and he's shown very good signs of life. So those are my top 10. Let's go now to the optimist side of things, to sleepers. Ross, you take it away.
Thanks for the intro, Dr. Dan Ratner. Chris Taylor, really quick. I love that pick. I actually saw him do batting practice a few days ago. He's going to benefit unbelievable with the DH in Los Angeles. He's going to play every day or get at bats every day now. Because before he was sharing time with different players and different positions. But Chris Taylor, yes, last year he was the Dodger MVP. He's going to have a monster year. I like him a lot. I like that one. I'll go right to Jess Chisholm. One of my favorite players in the league. I love watching him. If you go on YouTube, you can see him hit bombs like 450-yard bombs like out of the
450
stadium.
yards is a long.
But 450 feet bombs out of the stadium. Jess Chisholm to me is somebody that people will don't really know because he plays in Florida, small market team. This guy's a big player. Pick him up. Somebody else who's multi-position is Max Muncy. He's going to have over 30 home runs, over 100 RBIs. He's not going to steal many bases, but it doesn't matter. If he's healthy, he's going to have a huge year, and he bats pretty good for average. No one talks about him, gets no press. He can play first base. He can play second base. Draft Max if he's available in the 6th or 7th or 8th round. Great pick.
I love it, Ross. Now, I'm going to come to you next, Casey, but I do want to say, if anybody is hitting 450-yard bombs,
Mickey Mantle.
Draft them immediately because it's a 1,350-foot home run.
Mickey
I just
Mantle
want
hit
to
the ball
say
supposedly like 600 feet one time, but keep going.
that's pretty incredible. But 1,350 would be something else. Now, Casey, bring us the value picks, and then you can go with busts because you got both today.
Okay, well, my value picks are actually more, I think, sleepers than value picks because based on our definition, because they're younger guys. So these aren't guys who've really done it before. My value pick, one is Gavin Lux, the super high prospect of the Dodgers organization. He's kind of like a post-hype sort of player, and I like those sorts of players. He's going to have the second base job all to himself now that Corey Seager's out of town. They're going to slide Trey Turner over to short and give Gavin Lux the everyday at-bats. And this is a guy who all through the minors was a consistently stud. He was consistently a stud across the board. I think he's going to do it again. He's going to start hitting better, and his star is on the rise. So that's the first one. The second one is Brendan Rodgers. You have him marked as number 10 on your list. I think he's easily in that 10 range and can be above it, because the thing that's interesting about him is we always talk about Colorado Rockies hitters and the park effect. And we talk about these hitters who, like Trevor Story, awesome at home, made him a top 5 shortstop for many years, but always struggled away. Brendan Rodgers' slash line is actually better at home better on the road than it is at home. And that really bodes well for him. He hit, 285 last year, 15 home runs. I think he's going to go up. He's going to be a 300 hitter who can give you 20 to 25 home runs. He's coming into his own. He's starting to figure it out. Then the busts. And here we go. We mentioned Javier Baez. And you're right. I am a park effects guy. If you look at the statistics, Comerica is one of the hardest parks to hit in, much harder than San Diego's Petco Park, by the way, but which I think is average, is rates as one of the average parks. But that's not the only reason. The other thing, and I mentioned it before with Freddie Freeman, he's going from the National League to the American League. And we've seen really good hitters in the past struggle in their adjustment to the new league, and so these are all going to be new pitchers he's never faced before. He's going to be playing, and by the way, the AL Central actually has some really good pitchers when you look at the Indians and you look at the White Sox and you look at some of those teams they're going to be playing. I think he's going to struggle a little more. It's going to take him some time to adjust, and you're going to have to use a pretty high pick on him. I'm not saying he's going to fall out of the top 10, but I do think that for the price you're paying, he's a risk of a bust. And the other one is Jazz Chisholm. I know Ross talked about him as a sleeper, but Jazz Chisholm got off to an awesome start last year, 311 with 9 stolen bases, I think, in the month of April. The rest of the way, he batted 236 with 14 stolen bases total. So I don't know if the league figured him out and figured out how to pitch him. He's got all the upside in the world. He's one of those power speed guys, and you like having guys who can hit for power and can run the bases. But I'm sorry, when you hit 236 for 5 of the 6 months of the year, you got to do a lot to prove it to me that you're not going to be a bust. So that's my bust there at shortstop.
All right, so Casey's betting against Jazz Chisholm. Ross and I are betting for him, for sure. I also think, a 236 average is not what it used to be. And actually,
the league average
even
is
that bad,
248.
amazingly.
The league average is 248, and he was hurt last year. And you know what? This year he's healthy. He's been practicing in the Caribbean during the offseason. He's ready to rock and roll, and you're going to see a huge season from Jazz. And his name's Jazz. How can you not like a guy named Jazz?
Hey, I'm not saying I don't like him. I'm just saying I'm not paying the price for him.
I get it. And here's the other thing. He could make an adjustment. But with young players, you don't know. And if he does, he could be a monster. Meanwhile, I can't believe you have me correcting you about the Indians. We are now the Guardians.
Oh, I apologize.
There you go, the Guardians.
I just, on MFSN.
And it's the Commanders in Washington.
That's right. At least they didn't go with the Commandos. That was not okay. All right, now, guys, we are moving to shortstop. And, I know you're going to talk about Fernando Tatis. You were talking about ballpark effects, Casey. Well, if you say that Petco is kind of average, that's partly because of Tatis. He changed that park all by himself. All right, Ross, I'll turn it over to you. You make the list.
So my first pick is Barry Larkin. I was kidding. The first pick is obvious, NL MVP, Fernando Tatis Jr., just in case if his dad appears out of nowhere and he plays and you got to call him senior. But Tatis Jr. is a league on his own right now. He's the favorite for the National League MVP this year. He does everything, all 4 categories. You name it, he does it. He's obviously your number 1 shortstop. Trey Turner is my number 2 for the Dodgers. He steals, hits for average, hits home runs. Another quadruple threat. He does everything. You can't go wrong with Turner, and he's going to play the whole season for the Dodgers, which should help them a lot tremendously. Number 3, Beau Bashette. You remember his dad played for the Rockies. Beau steals bases. Beau hits home runs. Beau hits for average. Beau knows baseball. That's an old Bo
I was
Jackson.
wondering whether you were going to get there.
I was waiting
Bo
for
Jackson
it.
commercial. One of my favorites. What an athlete from University of Auburn. He's unbelievable. The next one is Marcus Semien. You talked about him already. I don't have to build him up anymore. He does everything too. Home runs. He's a small guy, and he's hitting bombs like 40 home runs last year. Unbelievable. Another guy, if you want to get this guy, you have to get him early. He's going to have a huge breakout year, this guy. This guy had all this hype. We talked about him every week on our stupid fantasy waiver wire show. Is Wando?
It's not stupid, people.
Don't call it
not
stupid.
Wando Franco. This guy is like 20 years old, complete stud. I don't have to build him up anymore. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame. He's going to be one of the greatest to ever play the game. If you want him, you better draft him early. He's going to have a breakout season. You heard it from me first because I'm Ross the boss. Number 6, he just traded teams. He went to Texas. Corey Seager. He was World Series MVP 2 years ago. Now he's playing for the Rangers. That ballpark, when it's hot in the summer case, you could hit home runs 1,200 yards. I mean, unbelievable. But I mean,
God, 3,600 feet now.
3,600 feet. But Corey Seager's going to have a huge year in Texas. It's a hitter's ballpark, a lot better than Dodger Stadium. It could be a good pickup for you if you can get him late in the draft. Not much hype on him this year because he's playing in a smaller market. Another guy that I have on my fantasy team is Xander Bogart of the Boston Red Sox. He steals bases. He'll have 20 stolen bases. He'll have 30 home runs. He'll have 280. He'll do the job. Good pickup. But he's number 7. Number 8, free agent this year, Trevor Story. He bangs. This guy's a great hitter. I'm hoping he stays in Colorado because that's an easier place to hit home runs at. But, I mean, God, he's the number 8 shortstop. Think about that. I mean, it's unbelievable the depth at shortstop this year in Major League Baseball. It's crazy. Number 9 is Dan Ratner's economic teacher, Tim Anderson. This guy, former batting champion, actually, in the American League. He hits for average. He steals bases. Great player. Won't hit 20 home runs, maybe 25, maybe. But he plays on that White Sox team that has that potent lineup, and they'll just get better and better. They're spending a lot of money in Chicago on the White Sox. Unbelievable. And number 10 is a free agent also is Carlos Correa. He's probably the most sought-after player right now in free agency. And when you're watching this season, I'm sure he's already playing on a team, but he has a lot to play for this season, and Carlos is going to have a big year. So those are my shortstops. Again, this position is very, very deep. So you don't have to draft a shortstop so quickly. This warning you guys a little bit. If you're playing a 10-person league and shortstop's only one position, you can wait a little bit because there's a lot of depth.
Okay, I like the way we're analyzing this. We're helping the people out there know which ones are the deeper positions. It really is true. You nailed it, Ross. When you get to Carlos Correa and he's the number 10 shortstop, you know it's deep. Meanwhile, Tim Anderson, my econ professor, it's an old MFSN joke. This guy hit the game-winning home run in the Field of Dreams game. Yes. It was one of the greatest moments of the season last year, and I think at some point we need to do some MFSN coverage from that event. I must go to that event.
We will send you there. Our producer, Greg Romano, will get you all the credentials, and you'll be at the game this year.
I cannot wait. All right, now we're going to go to sleeper picks first because, as always, I am an optimist. Casey, let's go with you.
Well, somebody I think who is a sleeper, and to me the top sleeper at shortstop, because I think he could end up a top 5 or 6 shortstop by the end of the year, is Willy Adames in Milwaukee. This guy hit 285 with 20 home runs, an 886 OPS in 3/4 of a season with the Milwaukee Brewers after he was traded from the the Tampa Bay Rays. And while that might seem like maybe he just got hot at the right time, this guy was a .219 hitter at home when he was with the Rays and hit .291 with an .858 OPS on the road. So he's always proven he can hit away from Tropicana Field, and he just proved it there. And with a full season, you're talking over 25 home runs and almost a 300 average as a shortstop. That's pretty darn good. Yeah. The other guy I'm going to name is another Milwaukee Brewer. He's going to be their third baseman, but he qualifies at second, short, and third. And when we were talking about multi-position eligibility, when you can get those three infield positions in one player, that's Luis Urias, who was a big prospect coming up with the Padres a few years ago, got traded to the Brewers in one of the trades. I would be guessing if I said which trade. But this guy hit .250 with 23 home runs last year for the Brewers, not getting everyday at-bats, and now he's guaranteed the starting third base job. And so that's another guy who's just, Milwaukee, as Christian Yelich has proven, as Willy Adames has proven, is a hitter's paradise, almost as good as Colorado when you look at the numbers. And given this guy everyday at bats, I think you could see another 25 to 30 home runs. And if he hits over 250, he's hitting above league average. And so to get that out of that player, when you can get him late in the draft, I don't even know if he'll be taken as a regular amongst the first 12 or 14 rounds. That's crazy good value as a sleeper.
He could end up being an actual steal, not just a sleeper, a steal where it's like you didn't even expect to get anybody like that, and maybe even wouldn't be drafted in some leagues. Great pickup. I also like your point about OPS, okay, so I just want to make a comment on that. OPS, for those of you who don't know, probably a lot of you do, who would be watching this kind of thing, but for those of you who don't, it's on-base percentage plus slugging percentage, and it really indicates how useful is this player with all of these stats. It's a great number to look at. For me, I want to see it over 850 at least. If it gets into the 900s, or over 1,000, you got an absolute beast. So now, let's talk about some value picks. I have two guys who I really like that you can pick up for good value. Dansby Swanson is one of them. He's a really great fill-in. Now listen, with shortstop being this deep, draft him as your backup. You're not drafting Dansby Swanson as your starter. But you can draft him, and if he's playing well enough, you could trade one of these big-time starters for a different position that you need. So make sure to get a good backup in the draft, and Dansby Swanson, I think, fits the bill as a pretty solid backup. He was a very high prospect, and he's turned out pretty well overall. Another guy who I think could put up big numbers, it's high risk, high reward, but Gleber Torres could have a very nice bounce-back year. He had a terrible year last year by his standards, really by any standards. He did not do that great, but we've seen him do it before, so you can pick him up for value late. Now, when it comes to busts, this is interesting. I really wonder what you guys think about this, but Francisco Lindor. Now, this is one where the park does matter. I saw him switch leagues. I saw him go to the Mets, and that park is not very good for hitters. And to me, the main thing is he shifted environments from the one environment he had always known. I don't know how well he's going to bounce back from that. So I have him down as a bust this year. Another guy who I would put down as a bust for very different reasons is Jorge Polanco. He might not even be on people's radars that much. But if you look at his stats, he was the 40th ranked overall player in Yahoo, and it's a total outlier. He just seemed to go on an absolute tear. I don't trust it. I could be wrong, but it's not where I'm putting my value. Okay, guys, we are moving now to third base. It's the hot corner. And Casey, you've got the assignment of the top 10. Take it away.
Okay, let's go. Number one, I think, is not up for debate. Jose Ramirez for the Cleveland Guardians has been excellent for 5 straight years. And I think he had one down year maybe in 2018 or 19. But other than that, he's been the top-rated third baseman or one of the top 2 or 3 third basemen every year in and year out. He does average, he does power, he does speed. For a while, he did position flexibility, but I don't think he qualifies at second base anymore. I think he's simply a third baseman. But he's guaranteed. He's one of those ones you can draft, plug into your third base spot on your roster, and never have to look at it again unless he gets hurt, which he hasn't really in the last 3 or 4 years. Number 2 is maybe the best young third baseman in the league, and that's Rafael Devers, who just can flat out rake. Watch as a Yankees fan, it's painful to watch him because he's on the Red Sox. I've watched him take Aroldis Chapman deep as a rookie. I've watched him hit almost everything we throw at him. The guy can just flat out rake. Power, average, RBIs, runs scored, great lineup. Number 3, to me, if you had asked me in 2021 where I was going to rank this guy, he probably wouldn't have made my list at any position. But Austin Riley was an absolute stud for the Braves last year from the beginning of the season all the way through the end. He hit for a good average, which was a shock because this is a guy who struck out a ton when he first got called up. And his power has always been evident, and he put it all together. There was nothing about the underlying numbers to suggest it was a fluke. This guy is apparently the real deal. Number 4 is Manny Machado. He could have been number 3 for me. This guy's been reliable for years since his days at Baltimore. He struggled with the Dodgers when he went there and played in the World Series. But other than that, the guy can flat out hit. He's a hitter. He doesn't run anymore. His knees aren't what they used to be, so don't expect a lot of running from him. But the guy's going to give you everything else. Number 5. Nolan Arenado. I feel like I'm saying, other than Austin Riley, the same names you could have said from last year's list or the list before. But that just proves the consistency of these third basemen, these top producing third basemen. He does it everywhere. There was some concern, would he be able to do it leaving Colorado, going to St. Louis? Guess what? He did it. He's good. He'll do it again next year. Number 6, this is my stretch because I have a soft spot for this guy, but it's Adalberto Mondesi. He played, I think, maybe 20 games last year because of injury, and one of his biggest issues is always health. The guy's not going to give you a big average. He's not. If he hits 260 for you and plays in 120 games and hits 260, which would be a dream, he will lead the league in steals and be a top 30 fantasy performer because of his steals and because he can still put up 15 to 20 home runs and steal you 50 bags and score 120 runs. And he can do that in fewer games than anybody else. Imagine what would happen if he stayed healthy. So I put him there with the hopes that he's going to be healthy. Number 7 is a bounce-back candidate. Alex Bregman struggled a little bit. And we talked about Jose Altuve at the second base getting no love. I think the Houston Astros players are still suffering the hangover of the cheating scandal. But Bregman he's a really good player. And I think he's going to put up power. He can steal you 15 to 20 bags. Just a good guy to get if you miss out on those top 4 or 5. I think the top 5 are, number 1 is number 1. Then 2 through 5 are kind of all interchangeable in some way, and they're kind of that tier 2. Then you get the drop off. And so if you miss out on those top 5 players, Bregman's not a bad choice. Anthony Rendon missed most of last year because he was hurt. But if anybody watched what he did in Washington, you know the cat can hit. And he did it in not a great hitter's park in Washington. He's fully healthy. I think he's going to go back to being an over 300 hitter who gets you 30 home runs and drives in a lot of runs. Number 9, I feel like Chris Bryant should be 39 years old because it feels like he's been around forever, and the guy's like 28 or 29. He plays multiple positions. That's what he was known for with the Cubs. People thought when he went to San Francisco he wasn't going to be able to show any power because San Francisco is another one of those stadiums where power just kind of disappears. But he was a top 10 third baseman with power numbers and a good average, and he can run a bit. He'll get you double-digit steals. So he's one who's sneaky. Number 10, and this is where it really drops off. I could have considered like 5 or 6 different players. I went with Johan Mankata because I'm going with the pedigree and with the talent. If he puts it together, if he stays healthy, in 2020 he contracted COVID, and he admitted that it knocked him out for the whole season. But this is a guy with good bat to ball skills who can give you decent power. Historically, he was a runner. I don't know if he's going to get back to running again, but number 10 was tough for me, so I put Mankata there.
All right, I like it. I'm going to dive in with my sleepers at third base. These are 2 guys who also had really good second halves. Actually, you know what? I know one of them did, and I need to check on the other. But I seem to remember. Well, we'll see. Well, listen. All right. Yeah, actually, I think not. Okay. Ty France, though, did deliver a monster second half. And, this is one of those guys who switched leagues and then went on a tear. So sometimes switching leagues actually pays off because they've never seen you either. So it can break in either direction. Ty France, to me, he's a great sleeper because people aren't talking about him much. And he's going to put up numbers. Now, Alec Baum did not have a good second half. I did look, but he's one of the sleepers that I did pick who still didn't have a good second half. And the reason I picked him is he's a high enough prospect that he just has the kind of ceiling that if he figures it out, he could be a difference maker. So I think you grab him, you take a chance on him, but you got to be patient with him because he could have a bad couple months in there and you're not going to be starting him. But he's a good back-end guy to take, I think. Now, Ross, take us through value, and then we're going to busts.
Value picks. I'm taking one of my favorite teams in the league, the Cincinnati Reds. Suarez, last year, first half, he was horrible. Okay, I'll admit that. Second half, especially September, he picked it up. He still had over 25 home runs. He's going to have a bounce back season this year. So if you want a guy that's going to hit 30 home runs and have close to 100 RBIs, Suarez is your guy. I know his batting average was at 200, very close to the Mendoza line. This year, it's going to be different. I have a good feeling. We'll see what happens. Another value pick. This guy had so much hype when he came out. Then he got hurt last year. He was out a lot of the year. Is Brian Hayes, the third baseman for the Pittsburgh Pirates. He has speed. He can steal bases, even though he didn't steal much last year. He has a lot of potential for stealing. He did it in the minors. This guy had so much hype on him with home runs and RBIs and fielding. He's going to put together this year. I think he's going to surprise a lot of people. He's going to be the Pirates' best player. You heard it from me first, Ross the Boss. Hayes at third base for value pick could be a great value for your team this season. Let's talk busts. Chris Bryant. I watched a lot of the Giants in September. He must have struck out like half the time. I mean, play people on base, people in scoring position. He was nowhere to be found. I mean, he was horrible. I think he's just getting older. Injuries are catching up to him. I don't like him, and there's more people out there. I know you guys like him. I'm not a fan. I don't know if he can bounce back. We'll see what happens. But Chris Bryant made my list of busts. My other bust is going to be Justin Turner, not because I don't like the guy, just because he's a year older. He plays in LA. I just feel he's going to play and not have a great season, and he could be out of the lineup by July or August. There you go.
All right, now listen. I didn't say I liked Chris Bryant, but I do. You got me. You got me.
And I did say I like him.
You did like him. He's number 8. I get it. I understand. And Justin Turner, I like Justin Turner. I actually saw him last week. I took a picture with him. But long story short, he is just a year older, and I just think he's injury prone. And let me ask you guys a question about injuries. You know, if you look at the rosters, there's 725 roster spots in Major League Baseball, okay? 725. Guess how many players were on IR last year alone? How many? Go.
I'm going to guess that it was 403.
Okay.
I'm going to say 586.
847 were on IR. So
wow.
And the Price is Right, I totally won.
The reason I'm saying this is this: with the older players, the guys that typically you get hurt, if they're not playing, they're worthless on your team. Get players that are younger. Get guys who don't get hurt. It's going to benefit your team. You're going to win your league if you have guys that are younger and better and stronger and faster. So it's just a rule that I'm going to have this season. I'm not taking these old guys to be on my team just because of their past performances. I don't care about that. I care about health. I care about Wander Franco, who has all this potential. Those are the guys I care about this season. That's how I'm drafting. That's how I'm beat you guys this year in baseball. I'm excited.
Can't wait to see it. Okay, we are switching to our last position.
What is it?
Of the hitters. You should know, Ross. You've played this game before. It's the outfielders.
Oh, I had no idea.
It's time for the outfielders. Now I have the top 10, but because there are so many outfielders, we ranked the top 20 outfielders. Then we're going to go through sleepers, values, and busts. And I have the top 10. I will have to say, the number 10 spot was very tough for me, so we're going to get into that. The other ones, I felt 1 through 9 were pretty clear to me. Now, number 1, we're going to have some differences of opinions about who should be there, but I don't think anybody's going to argue this guy shouldn't be in the top 5. Ronaldo Cunha, to me, is such a monster. Now, I know he got injured. He was out for a long time last year, but the kind of numbers that he puts up are just pinball numbers. They're absurd. So I think you go for that upside at that top spot as a difference maker between these other guys. The next guy for me is Juan Soto. Juan Soto, I took him in our MFSN league. He frustrated me early on. I ended up trading him for good value. he's still a monster, and he came back and proved it. So I have him at number 2. It's a little hard for me to believe that I have Mike Trout not ranked number 1, but the guy's getting injured a lot now, and that's the only thing that can stop Mike Trout. You guys will remember last year when he was out, I said he's not coming back, and he never did. So I hope there's no repeat of that, because I have him in our keeper league. It crushed my team that Mike Trout wasn't there. Mike, I need you, buddy. I need you. Now, a guy who's not on my team, but is on Casey's team, is Bryce Harper. I have him at number 4. To me, that's about as high as you can rank Bryce Harper, because he's always got the potential to sink a little bit. It's just the way Bryce Harper is. But he has really been performing of late. I like him a lot. I have him at number 4. I debated between him and Luis Robert. Luis Robert has been a fantastic player. He was injured for much of last season, but if you look at the numbers he put up when he was playing, it's insane. And that White Sox lineup is great. Number 6, Kyle Tucker is a player on the rise. I could see you ranking him anywhere between 6 and 9, but he's put up the numbers and he's got the pedigree that I expect him to be there. I just think he has a bit more upside, and he's on the way up. Mookie Betts, on the other hand, I think is slightly on the way down. It's hard for these players to keep up that level of intensity and dominance. Mookie Betts has the skills to do it. Will he rebound? I think he has more risk attached to him, and that's why I have him a bit lower. Aaron Judge is a fantastic player. He's had some injury stuff, but he hits for huge amounts of power, plays in a great lineup, of course. I have him at number 8. Number 9 is Starling Marte. To me, this guy's very underrated. He does hit for decent power, but he also steals bases, and that is extremely rare in this day and age in baseball. So a guy who steals that many bases, there's no way I was keeping him out of my top 9. I could have potentially ranked him higher, but I think, when your value depends on stolen bases, it feels a little bit more iffy than like with Aaron Judge, where it's power. He's just going to keep doing that his whole career. The last one, I had a strong debate between Teoscar Hernandez, Cedric Mullins, and Byron Buxton. It was hard to decide on those ones, but I went with Teoscar Hernandez because he did put up just absolutely beastly numbers, and I really like that lineup. So that's my top 10. Casey, you've got the next 10, as I recall.
Ironically, my top 2 in my category are Cedric Mullins and Byron Buxton. So you and I, we are very consistent in who we think the tops are. I put Cedric Mullins at number 11, as it would be, because the same way you talked about Starling Marte. This is a guy who is potentially a 30-30 player. I mean, Baltimore is a good ballpark for him to hit in. We talked about the ballpark. He put it all together from beginning to end. This wasn't a streaky thing where he put up monster numbers for half the season, a la Josh Bell, who we talked about as a bust under first baseman, and then has never done it again. He just proved he can hit good pitching. He runs when he gets on base. Byron Buxton.
Wait, hold on. I got to say also, I left him for number 11 because his name is actually Cedric Mullins 11. If you look at his name, that's what it looks like.
Fair enough.
Cedric Mullins the second, but it looks like Cedric Mullins 11. Okay, go ahead.
My number 12 is Byron Buxton, and if he could stay healthy, I think he's a top 5 outfielder, because 3 players in baseball last year had over a 1,000 OPS for the season, and we talked about OPS a few minutes ago. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who was arguably the MVP if it wasn't for Shohei Ohtani, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Bryce Harper, who was the NL MVP, and Byron Buxton. The problem is he only played in 61 games. If he had played in 140 games, let's say he misses 20 games, he would have had over 40 home runs and over 20 steals with a 300 batting average. The only 2 players I think to have done that in the last 20 years are Alex Rodriguez and Christian Yelich. That's some pretty elite company. And Alex Rodriguez, who knows what substances he was on when he did it. So let's just say one other player. After Byron Buxton, I went with Luis Robert's teammate, Eloy Jimenez. This is a guy who has light tower power. I mean, he doesn't even look like he's swinging hard, and the ball just explodes off his bat. He hits for a decent average. He's got good bat-to-ball skills despite his kind of power tendencies. And I think if he stays healthy, because he got hurt last year too, this is a guy who can potentially give you Jose Abreu numbers in the outfield. Number 4 is Yordan Alvarez of the Houston Astros. Primarily a DH, but he got enough games in the outfield to qualify at outfield. He's one of those Cuban guys like Jose Abreu who comes over and just he can flat out hit. Power, average, RBIs, the whole 9 yards. Number 5 is an outfielder only because the Red Sox need to find some place to put him when he joined them, because his numbers, he was just hitting the ball. He hit over 30 home runs. He hit, I think, 270 for his average or somewhere in that range, and that's Kyle Schwarber. I think this is a guy who is going to benefit. He's a free agent now. He's going to benefit tremendously from the universal DH, because wherever he goes, he can go to a National League team now and not have to worry about being in the field. I think the guy can flat out rake and started to put it together. Number 6, your AL Rookie of the Year, power speed guy, Randy Arozarena. He showed it 2 years ago when he was like the MVP of the offense for the Tampa Bay Rays, getting them to the World Series where they lost to the Dodgers. Last year, he was a little inconsistent, but still put up decent numbers by the end of the year and was your Rookie of the Year. So this is a guy who can climb that rank pretty quick. Number 7, JD Martinez. He's one of those old reliables who you just know he's going to hit. He's going to hit for an average. He's going to hit for power. He's going to drive in runs. He might not wow you, but the numbers are going to help your team no matter what. Number 8 might be the only Pittsburgh Pirate that's going to make any list this year. I know, Dan, I think you owned him last year, is Brian Reynolds. And the kid can flat out hit. He had no lineup protection anywhere, still hit over 300, hit a bunch of home runs. He can run. He gets RBIs. I think he could get traded to a contender, and you'll just see his numbers explode this year. So he could climb up that list. Number 9, I don't trust him yet, but Tyler O'Neill of the St. Louis Cardinals showed that he can hit for power and he can run, and that is a powerful combination. And when you're looking in this range, you're looking for power speed. If you can get those two as a combination, that helps you. If you have power and speed at every position, you don't need to chase steals, which is something a lot of people end up doing during a draft. And then number 10, or number 20, I'm sorry, I did my 10 list, but these were 11 through 20, is Giancarlo Stanton. The cat can still hit, and he can play DH in Yankee Stadium. He plays the outfield, so he qualifies there. He's going to hit 270, 280. He's just as likely to hit 50 home runs as he is 35. And in that Yankee lineup, if they're clicking, he's going to get RBIs in bunches. So that's my second 10.
All right, well done. Now we're about to go to Ross, but he has changed his look. He now looks like Fidel Castro or maybe Abe Lincoln. I don't know what happened, but he changed, and now he's going to do sleepers for the outfield.
That was a good list, Casey. Dan, great job. Unbelievable. There's a lot of outfielders, and there's going to be a lot of people. It's a position where it's a lot of people out there, so don't feel so tempted to take an outfielder so quick. Worry about pitching, worry about, third base. There's other positions that are a lot more scarce. But my number 1 sleeper is Jesse Winker of the Cincinnati Reds. He was considered as MVP throughout the season until he had a horrible September. But he was people were talking about him in August. This guy could be MVP. He was playing unbelievable. The Reds were on a big streak. Jesse Winker, I think, is going to pick it up this year. He's going to have a great season. You'll see it with him. Another ex-Cincinnati Reds, now plays for Atlanta, over 30 home runs every season, is Adam Duvall. No one gives this guy any credit at all. And with the DH coming to the National League, guess who's going to be playing every day? Case Adam Duvall. So Adam Duvall, if you need home runs, RBIs, he's not a big base stealer. Doesn't matter. Pick him up. You'll get him in the 12th, 13th round. No one's going to take him. Go get him.
And meanwhile, play him against righties. If you pick him up with the split stats and just play him against righties, he's a monster.
I agree, but I think this whole thing with with the DH in the National League this year, it's going to change fantasy in many ways, and you got to stay ahead of it like Ross the Boss is, and there's going to be a lot more at-bats for a lot of different players this season. It's going to mix everything up. It's going to be great.
All right, Casey, you got value picks and busts. Let's hear it.
Okay, I'll go with my busts first. And it was hard to come up with busts for the outfield. I don't think anybody's going to turn into Christian Yelich of 2020 and 2021, where he goes from an MVP to looks lost at the plate much of the time. And it speaks to the depth at outfield, by the way, that Christian Yelich isn't considered in the top 20 anymore, or even at the value or sleeper position. I guess he could be a value position, a value pick. But I went with Ronaldo Cunha, not because I don't agree with Dan that this guy is an absolute monster and puts up what look like video game numbers. But you're coming off a total ACL tear and reconstruction, and your game is power speed. You're going to have to use a top 3 pick to get him, or top 4 pick to get him, and there's risk. And so I would put him in the bust only because I think the risk associated with it. Number
Casey,
two,
if it makes you feel better, I saw him last week at UCLA, and he was training, and I asked him about his rehab. He's in perfect shape. He's running full speed. He's hitting like no one else I've ever seen before. This guy's the real deal, and I don't think his injury, according to him and what I saw, is going to affect him at all this season. And that's coming.
And I hope you're right, because
I witnessed that myself.
I absolutely hope you're right, because when Ronaldo Cunha is good, baseball is just better and more fun to watch.
I love it. He's such a nice guy, and his English isn't that bad either, just so you guys know.
And number 2, I put Bryce Harper, not because he's not a stud again, but I haven't seen him put back-to-back years together yet. You know, he had that great MVP season six years ago, I think it was. He gets hurt pretty regularly, and he goes through stretches where he strikes out a ton. And so I worry about him doing it in back-to-back years. Last year was insane. He's being drafted based on that insanity, and I don't know if he's going to put it together. Okay, my value picks. I think Jorge Soler is being incredibly undervalued right now. And the reason I say that is because while last year's line was uninspiring, you know, if you look at the overall line, his kind of World Series heroics actually started in late August, early September, and in the final 59 games, he batted almost 280 with 18 home runs. I think it was 18. And it was a 49 home run pace for those 59 games. And by the way, this guy already has a 48 home run season under his belt in Kansas City. So it's not like it's not something he's done before. If he can bat 270 and give you 45 to 50 home runs, and you can get him as a third outfielder, that's crazy value. So he is definitely one of them. And the other one, you talked about him earlier, I'm just going to mention him and not go through it again, is Lourdes Gurriel. The guy's a very good hitter, and he's a power speed guy with multi-position eligibility, and you can get him late. So there's my other one.
All right, now listen, we've covered hitters, but this guy was mentioned. He's got to be mentioned here. He's a utility player, doesn't have a position. It's Shohei Ohtani. We haven't even talked about him. He was an absolute monster last year. A lot of people shied away from him because you got to play him in your utility spot, and that does hurt. So that does ding his value some. But if you're ranking the top utility players, it's Shohei Ohtani is number 1, and number 2, and number 3, and number 4, and so on, all the way down to 10.
And check your league, check your lineups, because he played a bunch of games in the outfield last year.
He did,
so he
and
might
some
actually
leagues that
have
he's
outfield eligibility.
That's right.
Leagues.
That's right. So be aware of that, guys.
And there's Nelson Cruz also.
That's true. That's
Everybody
true. Actually, that's fair. Fair point.
Say, oh, this guy's too old. This guy's too old. Every year he hits 40 home runs. So I don't know what to tell you.
No. That's a fair point. Nelson Cruz really does need to be in that discussion.
Nelson Cruz, but Ohtani, top 10 pick. If you're doing a fantasy draft him. If you can draft him in 7 or 8, do it. It's worth it. He steals bases, hits home runs. I love him. That's all I'm going to say.
All right, now listen. If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and put your comments below, and we'll get back to you personally. Keep an eye out for our pitching preview. That's coming up very soon. Starting pitching and relief pitching. And then throughout the season, tune in every week. We're going to have our waiver wire show. We can help you win the year. We've done it before in every sport.
Every
So
sport.
come check us out.
Yep.
Every sport.
Every sport. Casey Scheinfeld, take that to the bank.
All right. Casey, Ross, thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining us out there. Looking forward to seeing you this season.
Play ball.